Good morning, everyone. Riot has just released their plans for the 2025 LoL esports season, and there are a lot of big changes happening. The first and foremost one, and the one that is probably the most important thing to talk about, is the fact that they are merging the LCS with the LLA scene and the Cblol scene. Now, the best way to show this is on Sheep Esports. They actually produced a graphic, thank God. They'll make this way easier to envision and sit and think about. So there'll be two conferences. The first conference will have 6 teams from LCS. Yup, you just read that right. There will only be 6 teams from the LCS. So we started from 10 teams to 8 teams to 6 teams. So 2 teams currently are going to be cut. Most likely it will be Immortals and Dignitas, one of the teams I'm actually working on now. And I say that because they definitely are not as popular. They probably don't have as much funds either to really like actually create a reasoning to keep them in the first place. So most likely those teams will be gone. And they are going to add a team from LLA, and then they're going to add a guest team from Tier 2. Now, they didn't say exactly what Tier 2 was. It could be the Tier 2 system from the North American scene. There's also a Tier 2 system in the Cblol scene. I don't think there's one for the LLA scene, at least not anymore, I believe. So if all that is true, then these teams will compete against each other, and then they'll fight for a promotion, and then they will earn a slot in the conference. Since it's the North Conference, we could maybe deduce that this Tier 2 team will be from North America. Like, it will be, like, from the NACL scene, which would be massive, to be honest, just to say that right now. Like, the idea that a NACL team could be competing with LCS teams sounds very enticing. So that change is, I like that. I like the idea that as a developing player, you actually can win your slot. You can literally earn your way into the LCS through your play without having to depend on, either luck or an LCS team deciding like, yeah, you're good. So that could be a really big change. For LLA, it's great too, because LLA was semi-dying. Now I'm going to say right now, LLA scene, their broadcast has been getting progressively better. I don't know if anyone watches it, but it has actually gone better. I actually enjoy watching it just from that alone at times. And the competition's okay. There's about 1 to 2 reasonably good teams, and so that's why you see this now. Because LLA also has been reducing their team count, and it seems fair that they don't really have that enough competition nor enough viewership to really warrant having too many slots. But keeping 2 teams and 1 on each in the North and South is not bad. Granted, I will say right now, the team from the North might get dogpiled, but they will learn and grow more, probably if they have the resolve in the North Conference compared to the South Conference. They could gain more confidence in the South Conference because the teams won't be as competitive, as good. But again, if you're competing against the best, then you have to evolve, right? Now, for the South Conference, and this is a little bit different than I envisioned, because when I first heard the news, I thought that they were just, everyone was just going to compete in the LCS. Like, everyone will get a chance to play against LCS teams and then kind of break apart what Brazil is. That's not true. So they're keeping 6 teams from Brazil. And again, they're adding another team from MLA and then another team from Tier 2, which I assume is their Tier 2 system from the Brazilian scene, right? I assume it's a team like that. So again, if you're a developing player from Brazil, it allows you a chance to promote, right? And so you created these 2 different conferences that will compete on their own, and then come playoffs, they will play against each other, and the winners, the losers, whoever, however that goes in the end of the day, will result in how international tournament attendance works, right? So the first problem I have with the idea of having a North and South conference is that again, you want to compete against LCS teams because they are going to be the best teams in this region. So naturally, you play against the best, you'll learn more, you'll get punished more. That's great. Right now, they're kind of incubating the South Conference, like the Cblol teams, all to their own. And so come playoffs, these guys are just not going to have had the chances to face off against the better competition, and they just might get ran, honestly, because they just aren't competing against them throughout the regular split. They're not probably going to be scrimming them much because of the ping difference. So in the end of the day, like, this is just great. This is good in a sense that it lets the Brazilian scene still develop on its own. It still lets the Brazilian scene, have that same raw emotion and, fan care that you love. But because you isolated them, yeah, these playoffs might go really bad. And I can tell you right now, if you consistently lose in playoffs, like if you're at the bottom, like Cblol never goes anywhere in this conference, like in these playoffs, that kind of sucks a lot. So, that's one thing I don't like about this. I understand how it does preserve some of their viewership and some of the viewership like worries for like Cblol going straight into LCS, right? So it's just there's just a lot of like there's positives and there's negatives both on what this merge was gonna be, no matter what. And this is what they chose, and hopefully the fans are gonna be okay with that, because for the first international tournament, only 5 teams make it. There's going to be only 5 regions because they combined a whole bunch of Asian tier 2 regions into one. So like they went even further into combining everything, and that's going to be a whole other mess. But for like America specifically, yeah, like for the first tournament, it's always going to be an LCS team, 100%. Like, unlikely probably a Brazilian team will beat an LCS team in a best of 5 to make the first international tournament. Okay, so you're not going to the first international tournament as the Brazilian seed or the LLA seed. Split 2, now it says the top team from each conference goes to MSI. So this is at least a little bit better, because now, one of the worries I had was that they weren't going to have a chance to go to international. That's not the case. So luckily enough, they will have a team, if they so happen to beat the tier 2 team and the LLA team, to go to international. Cool. Okay. And again, hopefully the stronger team in LLA is actually in the South Conference, because it will give them a higher chance of actually being represented. If not, then LLA just will disappear. Like this is good for the players to kind of grow, and then hopefully it will translate into players getting better and eventually being competitive. But if that doesn't happen and they never do well in South or North, that's pretty much lights out for them. Split 3, again, a team from each conference will attend. And so that's cool, but if you think about it, this means that LCS, and also this is the same result for MSI, basically lost a slot for a team to attend. Now, granted, I will say, 3 out of 6 LCS teams making international seems kind of stupid, but if those are your 3 best teams from America, like, yeah, it kind of sucks to not be doing that. So, and I'm not sure how this is going to work either. I don't think they really went into enough detail on what this split is exactly going to be like. But it's just, I don't know, like, because you can envision the 3rd place LCS team. What if they're just way better than everyone in the South Conference, but then they don't get to go to international? Like, that kind of sucks. Of course, it also would suck the fact that Brazil would not be able to send a team to Worlds or to MSI either, so you kind of feel like you have to do that as well. So again, they decided to do this, which hurts the LCS, but keeps the viewership and the interest of Brazil intact. And that's just the way they're going about it. And I've listed a whole bunch of negatives to this, both for the LCS end, for the Cblol end, for LLA, and really, I guess the only big positive in the end of the day from all this is the fact that we have a tier 2 team that's able to promote. I think this is the most interesting thing they added to all of this. Because like I said, at least then you have developing players who can actually earn that slot. And that's awesome. That's awesome. Also, keep in mind, by the way, by isolating them, and I don't know what Riot's going to do for prize pool or how they're going to help Brazilian teams or whatever, but none of this is going to stop the spending by LCS. Like, if LCS teams can spend way more still, I mean, like, cool. Like, they're just going to buy really high level talent, and what can Cblol can't match that. So again, this is why they also partially did this, because they just don't know how to resolve that issue. So that's the whole American conference. The first international tournament, like I said, it's the best team from each of the regions. So it's only 5 teams. Where is it? It's only 5 teams for the first international tournament, which, to be honest, is a huge joke. Like, that's really whatever. You know, MSI, it's 10 teams, and then we have 17 teams for Worlds, and I mean, like, that's cool, but it just doesn't feel like there's a lot. Like, watching 5 teams just play against each other, it's like just the best team from each region plays against each other. I mean, that's cool, but there's just not a lot of variety. You go to MSI, at least the double bracket, like, you know, winners losers bracket kind of helps with this situation a bit more. But again, it's just part of the whole play-in tournament was fun and interesting because it let these teams compete against, you know, it let them compete against some of the weaker competition. You know, obviously the major regions are always going to be a huge issue, but it lets you compete against some of the weaker competition to kind of show your pride. And then you have a shot or two at like the best teams, right? And that was fun. And that's just not going to be as apparent. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I think the upside is that I think PSCS might get more representation, or at least that whole like grouped up Asian region might get a little bit more representation from this in the end. I'm not 100% sure. Probably not, actually, when I think about it, because if you think about it, there was LJL. No, LJL was grouped up with L. Never mind, I lied. It probably doesn't do too much. So at the end of the day, I feel like the international tournaments didn't really like improve too much on that end. Like I said, like just one little off tournament is cool, but it's very small and really whatever. And at the end of the day, I think what Riot decided to do with the 2025 season will kind of destroy the LCS. I think the LCS is already like trying to make adjustments and improve and do what they can, but I feel like this kind of change it just lowers the number of like really top teams that you can really bring in even more. And it's definitely a change to promote the future. That's pretty much it. Like, this change is basically saying stop spending as much, you know, invest more in your local talent, your developing talent, because that's where it's going to go. That's like what you're going to have to do now, especially because you can get a team to promote that way as well. And just go that way. That's pretty much it. Like, outside of that, like I don't really care about the rest of these changes that they did. So, I mean, that's my initial reaction to all this. I think if you're an LCS fan, you should be feeling pretty bad about all this. If you're a Cblol fan, I think you probably will also feel pretty bad about this as well. If you're an LLA fan, I think you're okay with it. I think it sucks, but I think you're okay with it because you still have 2 teams that you can put all your best talent on, and you get to see them play against 2 really different regions. So that's like conferences basically. So that's pretty cool. And like I said, if you're a big like, I man, I hope this development team like does well and like shit like that, then that's great for you too. But for someone who has high hopes for LCS to become an international menace and do better, yeah, this wasn't good. If they had more development teams that could promote up for LCS, that actually would have helped because it would have created more interesting competition for them to rise up. But the fact that we also reduced the number of LCS teams is just not great. So yeah, I'm not too excited about this, but we'll see how it turns out in the end. Thanks for watching, guys, and there will be more news on this over time. But the LCS season starts in like 4 or 5 days, so probably won't be visiting this back for a little bit.